Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop. And in this video, we're going to be doing an initial comparison between the Rigorer AR2, which was one of my favorite hoop shoes of the past year. Like, this shoe is super underrated, but it's such an amazing performer. I really like playing this shoe. And of course, the new shoe, the AR3. So of course, these are Austin Reaves signature shoes with Rigorer. And in terms of price, the price is absolutely phenomenal, right? The AR2, when it came out, it retailed for $100, but then I see some colorways on sale for like 70, 80 bucks, which is insane, guys. Like, you can't beat that deal. You know what I mean? So yeah, crazy deals. And then of course the AR3, I did get it over at Kickzone. It retails for like 120 bucks, but there is one colorway for like 110, 107 bucks or something like that. But also on Rigorer, if you choose to get it there as well, it retails for like 80 to 100 bucks, right? But if you do choose to get either of these shoes, it does help me out if you buy it through the fee link in the description box. And it is always saying guys so much for all the support. But yeah, let's get it started right off with the Tracciones. And of course, with the AR2, it had phenomenal traction, really nice. Of course, the first color that I got, however, was a super limited edition, which was super nice, but then it's like translucent. So I was like, it picked up a lot of dust and it was sliding around all over the place. So I really didn't like playing in that shoe. But then, right when I was about to finish the review, I got another colorway in with a solid white rubber outsole. And that was so much better. It didn't pick up nearly as much dust. It had really nice dust performance. So, yeah. The solid white rubber option is extremely freaking nice and pretty much top tier, right? And also, we do have like a wavy herringbone traction pattern going throughout the entire outsole, and pretty much the entire design of the AR2, right? For the entire shoe, actually, the outsole and the upper and stuff like that is inspired by a butterfly. You know what I mean? So we got the TPU with the butterfly wings here in the middle of the outsole and stuff like that. But here in the AR3, we're just traditional herringbone. But then it's separated. We got two parts. You know, we have this white rubber and also this black rubber. And the black rubber makes like an A, the letter A pretty much. But it's a very similar feel. You know what I mean? Like, they're both using a rubber outsole. And then I was wearing both of these shoes at the same time, just in my apartment, and the AR2 of course had an amazing bite, and also the AR3 has an amazing bite as well. You know what I mean? I was walking around both of them and then trying them out for the traction, and I was like, wow, they feel extremely similar. So the AR3 feels like it's gonna have very good performance as well. And also, I don't know if you guys can see, I mean, I already wiped it off from the first video that I filmed, the AR3 in the first impressions, but yeah, it was picking up that dust, but then it was still biting through dust pretty dang well with the AR3 on my apartment, like my wood floors there. So it still feels like the AR3 is gonna have good dust performance, which I'm very happy about as well. And also in terms of the squeak, of course squeak has nothing to do with performance, but the AR2 was pretty dang squeaky, and the AR3 also has a nice little squeak to it as well, which I do like. And also in terms of durability, they both seem really nice. You know what I mean? They're both really thick for the grooves. The rubber is really hard. You got a lot of surface area. You got a lot of grooves. So for outdoor use, both of these shoes are going to be really nice, right? So the traction actually feels extremely similar. And of course, I haven't played in the AR3 yet, but once I do for the full performance review, I'll give you guys an update. But you know, the AR2 and the AR3 are feeling very similar, and they both feel extremely nice, right? So there's that. Moving on to the heel to toe transition, the AR2 just feels a little bit smoother, right? So first of all, the heel feels a little bit smoother because although it is a little bit caged with this plastic, it's pretty much fully exposed. And you can see the Showtime foam. There's a lot of compression here, right? So just doing like heel dominant strides, it actually has a nice bit of compression, but also a nice little bounce, right? The AR3 is a lot more caged, you know, with this plastic, with this rubber. So it feels a little bit more stiff, you know what I mean? But it's still not stiff though. I'm not saying it's stiff at all. It doesn't feel clunky at all. However, it does feel a little bit stiffer than the AR2. So there is a little bit of a difference there. And then here in the forefoot, of course, we do have a nice curve shape from both of the shoes, which I do like. And then of course, the AR2 had a very nice explosive feel, right? So when you're going out of your first step and stuff like that, you do have a nice springy feel. And same thing here in the AR3, right? Nice kind of like springy feel as well. However, if I were to nitpick the AR2, maybe it's because of this plastic piece. I don't know. The AR2 does feel a little bit stiffer here in the forefoot. You know what I mean? The AR3 feels a little bit easier to flex, just a tiny bit. And of course, it's not a huge difference, but of course this is a comparison video. So yeah, overall the AR2 feels a little bit better right now, but the AR3 still feels nice. And now moving on to the cushioning setup. So in terms of the foam, they're using the exact same thing. You know what I mean? Like they're both using full-length Showtime foam. Right, you guys can see on the medial side, it is exposed on both of the shoes. And then on the lateral side, it's pretty much fully caged, right? I mean, I guess besides here in the heel for the AR2. So yeah, that it feels really, really nice. However, in terms of the core feel, it is a little bit different, right? So the AR2 is a little bit higher up off the ground, especially here in the heel. It has a lot more heel cushion, right? So yeah, it all depends on what you like though. You know what I mean? Like the AR3 has really nice core feel. I would say it's a tiny bit higher up off the ground than the Sabrina 3. So again, like the AR3, very nice core feel. The AR2 still has nice core feel, but I would say it's more average, you know? But if you want a little bit more cushion, the AR2 feels a little bit better right now. And then the AR3 still feels really nice for the cushion, don't get me wrong, but it just feels a little bit more stiff and also lower to the ground, right? In terms of like the underfoot cushion, however, there's still a nice comfortable feel for both of the shoes. But where I feel the most difference, of course, is the heel, right? And here in the AR2, there's just a little bit more compression right underneath my foot. And then the AR3 is still nice, but it's just a little bit less, right? And if you guys didn't know, the AR2 is using a very, very soft mesh strobe board, but it's like a really, really open mesh, right? However, in the AR3, it's also using a soft mesh strobe board, but it's like a really fine, very small hole mesh material. But both of the strobe boards don't really do anything in terms of like, it's not stiff or glued down at all. You know what I mean? So they both feel very, very soft for the step and comfort, especially right when you put the shoe on. But then once you start kind of like, you know, actually jumping around, testing it, the AR2 just has a little bit more here in the heel. Not only for the underfoot cushion, but also for the heel compression, you know, from the outside of the shoe, like the midsole, we do have a nice bit of compression here in the AR2. The AR3, it's a little bit more muted, a little bit more caged, of course. It still has a little bit though. It still has a little bit of compression, but the AR2 definitely has a little bit more, right? So those are the differences that I feel right now. You know what I mean? The AR2 is a little bit softer for the underfoot feel, especially in the heel. There's a little bit more heel compression, but it's a little bit higher up off the ground. So it all depends on what you like, of course, right? The AR3 is still really comfortable, very nice, especially for the underfoot cushion, but it just feels a little bit more muted, a little bit more stiff with better core feel, of course. So in terms of what I like, I don't know right now. But if I were to pick, you know, I would say I like the AR2 cushion just a tiny bit better, you know, because again, like the core feel isn't super terrible, you know, so there's that. Moving on to the upper. So the upper is pretty much the same. You know what I mean? They are using like this leno weave, or they're calling it a woven material, right? But it's like a leno weave material, and it's going throughout the entire upper pretty much in the AR3, but the AR2 is pretty much just here in the toe box. And we have the same type of like fuse overlays as well, you know, and also here on the medial side. It's just a little bit different, but the AR3 is using more of like a synthetic material. Right here on the lateral side, as you guys can see, but the AR2 uses this kind of like plastic cage, and it kind of comes up here in the midfoot, you know. But here in the toe box, it's pretty much the exact same in how it feels. You know, it's a really thin material, but also it feels pretty supportive because around that we do have this fuse, and the fuse material definitely gives it a nice supportive and rigid feel, you know what I mean? And then here in the midfoot area, it seems pretty similar as well, not too different. For the tongue, they're both really bad for the padding. It's really minimal, so that's good if you want a very minimal feel, but for me, I like to have a little bit more padding, but they're very, very similar, right? They're also both half booty construction tongues, giving you a better overall one-to-one fit. And then also here in the ankle area, I would say is pretty much the exact same for the padding as well. So not super well padded. I would say maybe a slightly less than average. So yeah, the upper actually feels extremely similar. Not only in terms of quality, you know, they're not the best for quality, but also just like on foot and how it feels very, very similar. So there's that. Moving on to the fit. So I went true to size for both of the shoes and literally the exact same type of fit, you know what I mean? So lengthwise, I'm good going true to size. My toes are very close to the edge of the shoe. Also here in the toe box, very similar as well. You know what I mean? So it's a pretty snug fit, not super duper snug. I can curl my toes up just a tiny bit, but it's still a pretty nice snug fit. And width-wise, they're very similar as well. It's like a normal width for me, so not super narrow, not super wide. If I were to nitpick though, I would say the AR2 feels a little bit narrower, just a tiny bit right over here. But again, it's not that different, you know what I mean? So if you have the AR2, and you know what size you are here in this shoe, pretty much go the exact same size here in the AR3, right? So yeah, there is the fit there. Moving on to the support and lockdown. Also, like here in the AR2, I had zero issues, right? Lateral containment was very, very good. You can see the plastic cage, you know, here in the forefoot, here in the midfoot, and here in the heel. There's an internal TPU heel counter. The foam comes up as well. So yeah, my foot was not coming out of the footbed, but also like here in the AR3, it feels very, very nice. You know what I mean? Like we got the synthetic material here, we got this plastic cage, we got the external heel counter, as well as an internal heel counter, it feels like. So this feels just as supportive, right? And also underfoot, the torsion support is very good in both of the shoes too. However, again, if I were to nitpick, the AR2 is just a tiny bit stiffer, you know, not only for the torsion support, but also here in the forefoot. But they're pretty similar nonetheless, right? Let's see which shoe is wider though. I mean, I feel like they'll probably be around the same. Yeah, they're pretty much around the same. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like what's in contact with the ground right here, it's pretty much the exact same. I would say the AR3, I guess, protrudes out a little bit more, but it's like on top. It's not like on the bottom in contact with the ground. So that doesn't really do much, you know what I mean? But pretty much the exact same width for both of the shoes, both laterally stable. No issues so far with containment or lockdown here in the AR3, and the AR2 was very good for me. So support and lockdown, very, very similar and very, very good. However, again, the AR2 just feels a little bit stiffer underfoot, you know what I mean? So there is that. Moving on to the weight of the shoe. I mean, the AR2, I feel like was average weight, right? Yeah, 12.1 ounces, and then the AR3 is 12.1 ounces. So they didn't really change the weight up. It's literally the exact same weight. So yeah, it feels very similar. The upper feels very similar as well. And now moving on to the aesthetics, I definitely feel like the AR2 looks better. The AR2 is like some of the colorways as well. Like this colorway looks sick. It's like the ice cream colorway, right? Super duper clean. I love the overall design as well, especially since it's inspired by a butterfly. The insect, like there's cocoon themes with the embroidered parts as well, you know? The AR3 like, still looks pretty cool. It's a very unique looking shoe, and I do really like this colorway, but I don't think it looks as good as the AR2 in my personal opinion. So tell us what you guys think looks better down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, the AR3 definitely feels literally the exact same or very, very similar to the AR2. Like the traction, again, they both feel really, really nice, very familiar. The upper, again, feels extremely similar as well. They're pretty much using the exact same linen weave type of material, and also on foot feels extremely similar too. The only difference is the cushion, and it's only a tiny bit of difference. You know what I mean? The AR3 just feels a little bit lower to the ground, a little bit stiffer, so I guess a tiny bit more responsive, but then the AR2 feels like it has a little bit more cushion, but a little bit worse for court feel, right? And also the weight is exactly the same as well, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's not a bad thing. That's actually a really good thing. Of course, in my personal opinion, I would say I would want something a little bit different, you know what I mean? Because you know, if it's a new signature shoe, I want something a little bit different, you know? But of course, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I really like how they did it differently in terms of design, you know what I mean? Like, for example, in Curry's, you guys already know, like Curry's is the exact same shoe. It's the same freaking shoe with the flow for the past however many years, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, we know what to expect. Again, like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's like, if you're gonna make a new shoe and you want someone to buy a shoe, why would you make it literally the exact same as the past like 5 models? You know what I mean? Like give us something a little bit different. Even though you want it to feel the same. Maybe the player, you know, the athlete wanted a similar feeling shoe, and he likes that. Why not just make it different looking, but also make it feel the same? And I feel like Rigorer did a really good job here. Maybe like Austin Reaves really liked the AR2 and wanted something very, very similar in feeling to this shoe with his new shoe, and that's what they did, you know what I mean? But they made it look extremely different, you know, the outsole even very, very different, the overall design extremely different, but in how it feels, very, very similar in my personal opinion so far, right? So I feel like they did it very nicely, very tastefully, but again, in my personal opinion, I want something very, very different, I guess, every single year. But that's just me. But I'm not mad though, you know what I mean? Again, the AR2 was one of my favorite shoes for the past year, and the AR3 I'm really liking so far. So, but anyways, that about concludes my comparison between the AR2 and the AR3. Again, if you guys do want to cop either of these shoes, I try to leave in the field link in the description box. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.